The Seventh Ray, Book 2, The Red Ray, of the Journal of the Church of the Hermetic Sciences, and the Ordo Templi Astartes gives a more detailed sort of view than what you're going to see in, some of the videos. Although that member-only video of the Tatwas, it seems that perhaps you're going to get one video, like in the Rites of Magic video, for each of the Tatwas, which is why it's a 2-hour film. But that DVD, the Dark Mirror Magic DVD, and the Magic of Solomon DVD was why I ended up picking up more of the books. Now, I can't tell if there's a difference in the colors in how these go, because you have the Blu-ray, then you have the Red Ray, which is the crossover to the 3rd millennium of the Christian calendar, or technically right before, right? Because year 1 to 1000 is the 1st millennium, then to 2000. And then you have the Green Ray, which seems as big as the first 2 volumes. And the Violet Ray has new material, but it's a reprint of the first 20 issues of the 7th Ray, when it was a quarterly magazine. Or maybe it was approximately quarterly. I don't remember if it was 4 issues every year that they did that. Arthur Machen's Spagyric Quest of Beroaldus Cosmopolita is the sort of thing that I wish would be done more with fiction. That it's obvious that the thing is a teaching story and full of symbolic meaning and motivation. Because what do you find in that story? You find the sort of grimoire type of work aspect, right? You get a bunch of items, and they're particular items and all that, and there's magical formulas in the story for initiation, and there's symbolic ways of talking about alchemical transformation. And by symbolic, I mean that, you shouldn't expose yourself to mercury like that, and, lead and all that. I don't remember the actual details of the story there, but, and Bob Cuneo gives it illustrations that help in the teaching of it. Arthur Machen wrote The Great God Pan, which maybe I'll share that on my channel. And this was something that influenced H.P. Lovecraft. Page 13 has an illustration that you would call an advertisement for Feraferia, drawing attention to the honor of the feminine, of love and wildness, but the seriousness of methodology and stuff as well. And rather than having the Ordo Templi Astartes operate as an OTO chapter, it has a collegium which has specific ways of bringing out teaching and offers some initiations, but that's not the main or total thing of the order. Brother Idome has his interpretation of verse 76 of the second chapter of Liber Aldo Legis, 4638 ABK 24 ALGMOR 3YX 2489 RPSTOVAL. What meaneth this, O prophet? Thou knowest not, nor shalt thou know ever. There cometh one to follow thee, and he shall expound it. But remember, O chosen one, to be me, to follow the love of new in the starlit heaven, to look forth upon men, to tell them this glad word. And there's other verses that they talk about in backing up where his interpretation comes from. But we have the ritual of the star ruby, you know, that Greek pentagram rite. Well, I mean, you know, it's like the pentagram rite. And of course, being a cosmological rite, it's important to connect these to cosmic principles and to draw importance to looking at the originals, not just the original language sometimes, but the original writings. Much like what I did with, well, what if the number isn't 666? Is it 616 or is it that other number? You know? And why would it be other than 666? You know, to throw in the Bible thing. Now, the idea with that cipher or whatever, well, it wasn't that it was impossible. It was just, you know, hey, you may be capable of it, but, you know, you're not going to do it. You're not going to figure this one out. But is it limited to one person figuring out something? No. If you seriously want to practice the magic of Thelema, perhaps you're going to figure out something specific for yourself in that formula. I did at some point. I didn't remember. But I don't think it was uncovering something for the entire thing, right? In 1652, there was a 22-path Tree of Life diagram. And it didn't have the horizontal bars. So that would indicate there'd be 25, right? And there's other reasons to consider the 11-sphere Tree of Life as the base of what was going on. Like, for example, in the Islamic and the Zoroastrian system, you have the 11 points within the 11 points. So, you know, 121. And there's ritual significance to that there, but we saw in the extended version of the, what was it, the Magic of Solomon one, or was it the Dark Mirror of Magic video, that you saw very quickly the tarot trumps. Now, in the Violet Ray, it talks of how Ordo Templi Astartes, they have their, you know, they have their own set of tarot cards. And you've also seen that issue the development of the group. Unity, conquest, alchemy, and, you know, you have some attributes and stuff to show those new things. And there's a rotation of the colors or bars or something to make room for that. Beyond Lemuria, Yeah, very interesting one. So the Enochian watchtowers. So here we have a sort of Pythagorean numerology, but it's not in the alphabetical order of Enochian. It's also not considering, like, for example, how there's reason to think that maybe the number values of Enochian break down much like the Abjad or the typical numerology of Hebrew, in that, you follow the alphabetic order 1 through 9, 10, 20, and then you get 90, then you get to go into the hundreds. So there's that for those 21 letters. So you should only regard 21 letters when you're working with Enochian. But the idea of a corrected tablet based on the numerology, doing it their way, I'd like to see something else too. But we have 3 different orders of how you order the tablets. Which quarter do you put which element in? And you have up to 4 variations of each letter. You don't see the full variation here. I don't know any publication that puts it all in one place. The full publication of the diaries, not the True and Faithful Relation, but the actual original diaries, you can see that, but I don't know anybody else has done that all in one graphic. So you find that there's different, there's different things about the way the different, if you use a different order, that it flows, and you look at the numbers. But trying to come up with a corrected tablet based on the numbers, and how the Great Cross, how that puts itself in the middle, you don't honestly see too much of that. And other numeric ways of breaking this down, symbolic connections, and how John Dee was very biblically minded. So that's a important thing to look at. On page 60, we have a Frederick McLaurin Adams illustration of Persephone and Demeter, like they're Siamese twins. Different hair colors in a symbolic sort of way, just like a lot of people will put the 4 hair colors as the way of illustrating the tarot. It's not saying that one person's hair color, whatever, is better in that sort of sense. And the pomegranate is a symbol of dreams, or the very specific aspects of the consciousness. There's the moon and the star above, but it almost feels like part of it is related to the day. The natural and the artificial worlds connect to each other. Then we have a reference to an earthbound eroticism, but not, just some pornographic fantasy. Some people may not agree that, society would have worked this way or whatever, but that's maybe not the point either. If you step off into the gathering, and this is like things are like in the gathering, but again, it's not what you'd call an orgy scene, so that's not what I'm talking about, and maybe someone's going to take that offensively and in the wrong sense, but I mean, I'm drawing the distinction here. It's about stuff like the solar and lunar power and the forces of nature, and acting out aspects of their process as human beings. It ends with a baptism, if you will. You have the carrying over of transmissions from night and day. Soror Dalalia talks about how 98% of what we call religions had an idea of an afterlife, and how a lot of people going too far into the techno neo-pagan thing, or like it's about the technology of experience alone, they tend to pretend that there is no afterlife, or maybe there is no even spiritual existence, no actual spiritual existence, like a lot of people like I have a book and this person's talking about, well, it's about joy and utility, and it's like, well, what there's so there's no real morality that you're bringing up, no, the entities don't actually provide any guidance that would be distinct. Okay, so it's going contrary to that. It's attempting to explain something from the Minoan palace, and it talks in favor of the romantic idea. Now, it doesn't mean that one isn't guarded in, grounded in reality. It means that a person is less about technicality, although you may be strict about following certain principles or methods or something. It's about venerating the divine for real, or the entities that a person considers or treats as deities for real. And of course, the Church of Hermetic Science approach is not as Carsists. Your typical Goetia work is this idea that a person's like, not only God of their own temple, but like, because of that, they get to boss around other entities rather than having a decent relationship. Frater Thabian's Return of the Dragon Lords kind of combines that reptilian and alien and, government and from outer space sort of thing that, I don't know, combines like Lovecraft and some other things. But we can kind of wonder why it is that reptilian greys and some other things are models of what we have. Well, look at what happened to the dinosaurs. How precise was that? And it goes more into that. But page 81 has an illustration as if the demons were wearing robes and doing Solomonic magic and, looking at the humans and, our so-called beauty and like, ooh, that's scary. It's like, that's sort of how it is. There's a lot of this beauty is in the eye of beholders, or a strangeness. But, the person leading the thing's kind of directing them too. And it's important when a person leads in rituals, it's not just memorizing the rituals and perhaps some, the rituals could have scripture, they could have some other teachings that are put into the rituals, but it's to enable to, offer some instruction. But the importance of the truly enlightened, I would say, is not to make it about themselves. That's always a sign that the person's not the enlightened figure that they say they are when they're making it about themselves, rather than trying to help people along into their own way, whether a person literally believes in some sort of revelation or not. And I think elsewhere, the reason why the Church of Hermetic Sciences is not OTO, explicitly, even though they do have a space for that, and they do have a charter for that, they don't take some of Aleister Crowley's revelations as literal are for anybody other than him. And they want to portray an aspect of magic in which one doesn't have to use drugs to have the experience. The enclosed chapter of Addison's Quest does talk about instructions. It does talk about an example of magical instruction in the Bible, or at least a model for that. Frater Solomon's The Melting Eye. I don't know if that book was ever finished, but the extract in here gets you into this idea that, well, the demons all have their role and all have their teachings, and there's some rules in life, although more is possible than you may realize, and that there's a purpose, some good that you can do through these things, which of course connect to your physical life. Then we have the teaching of how to understand Arthur Edward Waite and West Anglican Curmudgeon. We have a review of Nazi Bimbos and the Sword of Siegfried by Ernest von Keister-Proben. I mean, it's a fantasy with some sort of meanings and stuff included, talking about a rise of a Fourth Reich and esoteric Hitlerism. Of course, Nazi is actually the difference between between Nashi, and Nashi would be the prince or the ruler of the land, and Nazi would be overseer, and it was used as a derogatory term before the NSDAP. So calling them Nazi was actually not the thing. It was a slur that was usually used for the elite. You know, some names may be familiar from the 1,000-year-old list of them, like Epstein, and the Gates and the Soroses and the Rothschilds and stuff like this. They all come from those families. There are other ones too that aren't from the earlier material, like we have the Morgans, for example. Everybody knows who the Morgans are, or at least and then there's a couple other book reviews: The Grand Grimoire of Pope Honorius and Ritual Magic Manual by David Griffin. And David Griffin's, it's being 666 pages. I don't think you have to put in the Yahweh and stuff like this into the Enochian system, but it is a functional system. I will agree with that. And one thing that you find in some of this stuff is that the antiquity of things, it's not about the antiquity. It's about the being able to develop something about developing a magical system or resurrecting one, right? And just like John Dee's magic, personal development and piety and a mission for the world, rather than something secretly you do in your, in your basement or something. It's not the thing. If you see my basement, that's, except as a bomb shelter. I'm not doing, I'm not ever making that a focus of anymore. So the Magical Tome of a Divine King, the Medicine of Solomon. It's not it's not a version of the lesser and greater keys and all that of the Goetia, but it's important that it is related to that sort of tradition. And if you look at the actual ages of the so-called Solomonic text, you do find that not only the Greek Testament of Solomon existed, but you have, the Medicine of Solomon, that, some of these texts were actually before that. And there were versions of what you could say Goetia that predate the Christian versions of the Goetia. And forbidden rites, well, who makes the things forbidden? But necromancy, yeah, that would have been a dangerous thing back in the day, and it still kind of is, from the middle of the 1400s. It's a commentary on that stuff. And Ibn Khaldun's method of scrying the visions, the Magic of Solomon, they talk, is that the source in the Magic of Solomon that they talk about? The Lemigation, a more detailed version than the Magic of Solomon book, I guess, but going into specifics about certain manuscripts without per se working them out too much. But yeah, it's the whole work. So that was, edited by Mitch Henson. So that was supposed to be a first thing there. Now more is being said about this. I'm just saying in short, the Red Flame Thelemic Research Journal. So it tends to be bigger and authoritative rather than the approach that you're going to see here. And the last word, yeah, basically they're going to continue to try to innovate and develop and share things from the archives that they consider to be more useful than some other things, are important to bring out at that time.